A lot of people got overwhelmed by the number of characters that were introduced in the first episode called Winter is Coming. So for those of you who have spent a lot of time researching how the different houses are connected and why the political succession is so unstable, here's a concise and easy to understand guide. Let's look at House of the Dragon, the Targaryen rules, explained. To start with, here's why the history of Targaryen is important. What we know is that House of the Dragon sets up a really nice simple battle that will decide the fate of the Seven Kingdoms. This point will probably be a great place to start for people who haven't seen Game of Thrones before. This is because the only political conflict is between members of House Targaryen. Once again, the Iron Throne is at the center of all conflicts. This time it's because of dynastic fights that start after King Viserys I Targaryen dies. Even before this, when we look at the first episode, the heirs of the dragon, many people make claims to the throne. Basically, King Viserys Targaryen I has a tragedy that makes him think about what will happen to the Seven Kingdoms after he dies. If you go way back, like 190 years before the event of Game of Thrones, that's when House of the Dragon actually takes place. There's a short line of text and narration that plays before the episode's title cards explaining that the series' events will lead to Daenerys Targaryen becoming queen. Before the events of House of the Dragon, the Seven Kingdoms of Westeros were united by King Aegon Targaryen, who was also known as Aegon the Conqueror. If you look into it, the story of Aegon and his dragons comes up many times in Game of Thrones. This is important because it's seen as a turning point in the history of Westeros. With Aegon's domination, the realm is now run by the House Targaryen. Coming up, men will always want to be the ones to rule. King Viserys I took the Iron Throne after King Jaehaerys I. Just so you know, King Jaehaerys I was one of the Targaryen kings who ruled the longest. He was kinda popular, people liked him a lot, and he was also a good leader, something you rarely see in shows like these. As long as he was the one ruling, Westeros was very peaceful. In the Heirs of the Dragon, we learn that Viserys has been in charge for about a decade. A great council chose him to take the throne. On the other hand, Princess Rhaenys Targaryen, who also had a right to the throne, was replaced by a male ruler. Apparently, a man in power was more digestible to the council. We also see Viserys hoping he and his wife, Queen Aemma will have a son. This is obviously so they can keep the lineage going after Viserys. Followed by, tragedy strikes Viserys' family. Everything goes well until the time of birth when something unexpectedly bad happens. Viserys is at a royal tournament to celebrate the birth of his son when he hears that his wife is dying during childbirth. At that point, he has to decide whether to save the mother or the child, but he can't save them both. In the end, they opt to save the child, and even though they do a really risky procedure to save him, both Aemma and her son end up dying. This obviously shatters Viserys, who is no longer in the mood to think about politics, but he needs to decide if the roles of men and women in the Seven Kingdoms need to change. Daemon, the king's brother, would become king if there was no male heir, but Viserys and some of his council members decide that Daemon might not be a good choice to take the Iron Throne. You see, Daemon is the leader of the City Watch, and he has a reputation for being super violent and enjoying it at the same time. He's known for telling the people who protects King's Landings to beat up criminals in extremely brutal ways. Hey, anyone would want to avoid an unstable ruler like that. What's more, Viserys making Rhaenyra heir will cause him trouble. Viserys thinks about the fact that he already has a daughter and decides it's finally time to break tradition and make Rhaenyra an heir. This is a huge thing because at a time like this, no woman has ever sat on the Iron Throne. This also brings up a lot of questions. Rhaenyra has taken Daemon's place as the next male heir to the throne, which obviously makes him very angry. And if a woman is going to rule the kingdom, what about the queen that never was? Lord Corlys Velaryon is Rhaenys' husband and is a member of the king's council. He actively suggests that Rhaenys could be a good heir. Then there's Alicent, who later becomes Viserys' second wife and gives birth right away to a boy named Aegon II. Westeros' traditions say that a male heir is best, but Viserys has been adamant that Rhaenyra will be his successor so far. This is where the politics start to get a bit nasty, because Alicent wants Rhaenyra's place as heir to be taken by her own son when she and Rhaenyra grow apart. Apparently, the people of King's Landing think this entire situation is pretty funny, and they're also very freely making fun of this royal problem. In the story King of the Narrow Sea, Rhaenyra and Daemon dress up as regular people so they can walk around King's Landing. While they're out, they end up watching a play that makes fun of Rhaenyra by calling her a weak woman and talking about how the birth of Aegon II threatens her claim just because he's a man. Up next, the rules of house names will change with Rhaenyra's marriage. As Rhaenyra and Daemon get closer, Viserys becomes more and more cautious. He realizes that he needs to quickly get his daughter married off to someone before her virtue gets tainted by Daemon. So, in order to avoid a scandal, he makes Rhaenyra marry Lord Corlys' son, Laenor Velaryon. This will help bring together Westeros' two most powerful families. It's also an apology from Viserys, who chose to marry Alicent instead of Corlys' daughter, Laena, which would have been better from a political point of view. In We Light the Way, we see that Viserys goes to see Lord Corlys and Princess Rhaenys. While he's there, they talk about how Rhaenyra and Laenor will get married. Corlys wants to have a king whose last name is his, but Viserys says that just because Rhaenyra is a woman, his family dynasty can't end. They come up with a solution. Rhaenyra and Laenor's children will be called Valyrian, but when one of them becomes king, they will be called Targaryen. These rules seem pretty okay to Corlys, and so they decide to follow them. Let's look at how Game of Thrones gives us some clues. So how does all this have anything to do with Game of Thrones? When the original series took place, the Mad King Aerys II Targaryen had been deposed by rebel leaders Robert Baratheon I and Ned Stark. Robert takes the throne for himself, and Viserys III and Daenerys, the children of Aerys II, are sent away. Viserys dies in the first season, and this makes it possible for Daenerys to claim the throne. But Game of Thrones proved that Aerys II does still have a living male heir, which had been thought for a long time. During Robert's rebellion, Aerys II's oldest son Rhaegar had an affair with Ned Stark's sister, Lyanna. Before Lyanna dies in childbirth, she makes her brother promise to keep her son's parentage a secret because she's scared something would happen to him if people found out. Ned decides to raise their son, Jon Snow, as his own, saying that Jon is his bastard son. At the end of the series, we find out that his real name is Aegon Targaryen, which makes him the 7th person to have that name. Finally, Viserys' death leaves things a bit uncertain. Even when the Game of Thrones takes place, male primogeniture is still the rule. So the question is, what happens to Rhaenyra's claim to the throne in House of the Dragon? We know Rhaenyra was named Princess of Dragonstone and the king's successor while he was still alive. This is also shown in the trailer for House of the Dragon, where all the major lords of the realm swear their loyalty to her. But when Viserys I dies, the 7 kingdoms will be split in half. What we're asking ourselves is, should Rhaenyra get priority because she's the oldest child of the last ruler? Or should Aegon, who was the firstborn male heir? And that's not even taking into account Viserys' brother Daemon, aka the Troublemaker, or his cousin Rhaenys, who is married to the powerful Lord Corlys Velaryon. When you think about the fact that everyone still has very large battle-ready dragons, things will heat up pretty quickly. We're used to seeing almost no Targaryens on Game of Thrones, so it'll be interesting to see so many of them in this series. And on that note, that's a wrap for this video. What do you think is most likely to happen when it comes to the succession of the throne? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.